More Jews are leaving Israel than they are coming in. This is according to Israel's Central Bureau of Statistics, which since 2018 has spoken about a negative migration balance. In a recent report the Statistics Bureau published, it pointed out there is a sharp decline in the number of immigrants from France and the United States, where the world's largest communities of Jewish faith live outside of Israel. The largest decline in the number of migrants to Israel was from France. In 2017, 29% of the French population living in Israel decided to pack up and leave back to France. In 2015, thousands from the Jewish faith left France for Israel after the 2015 attacks in Paris. It seemed as if the Jews of France would come to Israel in droves after the 2015 attacks in Paris, but only a few thousand out of the almost 500,000 Jews who live in France actually immigrated to Israel and stayed there. Others returned to France citing issues such as lengthy procedure for professionals who have to go to work in their field in Israel, or that it will take years to find work, as things in Israel are very much more complicated than they looked on paper. Immigration from France to Israel is especially declining, with only 3,157 Jews from there moving in 2017, as compared with the 6,629 back in 2015. Too many Jews in France, staying in France and elsewhere in Europe beats leaving to Israel, despite the insecurities they feel there.
So I wouldn't want to, it'd be a shock for me to have to leave. So right now, I live here, but I know there are a lot of people who are thinking about it.
La question elle est divisée en fait. Il y en a qui pensent que voilà, on n'est pas à l'abri, ils rentrent dans une psychose générale. Ça c'est une partie. Une partie comme moi, que je ne partage pas donc la première partie, c'est que je ne suis pas du tout d'accord. Il y a eu les attentats, c'est un fait, d'accord. C'est une chose pour nous qui est passée, enfin pour moi personnellement qui est passée pour beaucoup de gens.
Il y a un ressenti dans la communauté juive de France que peut-être il n'y a pas un avenir dans 30 ans en France. Et la communauté juive aime la France, aime la patrie, aime la culture, la littérature. Mais pour toute la réalité qu'on voit aujourd'hui, on craint que peut-être on ne pourra pas rester libre et pratiquer notre...
Faire l'alia en Israël, les Juifs quitter la France, je pense c'est donner raison aux terroristes. On est bien d'accord. C'est-à-dire qu'on a peur, on se plie et on part. Moi, je ne suis pas d'accord.
Les attentats de janvier, Charlie Hebdo, etc., qui ont suivi le Bataclan encore il n'y a pas longtemps, c'est vrai que ça nous a amené comme une sorte de peur et de crainte. Donc on doit être beaucoup plus vigilant, faire beaucoup plus attention, surtout au moment présent des attentats, enfin au moment où ça a lieu. Voilà, c'est vrai qu'il faut être très vigilant, vraiment faire attention, être très prudent. Après, là, aujourd'hui, il y a eu quoi, 2 mois qui sont écoulés ou 1 mois et demi. Là, ça va mieux.
It's right to do what you want, but don't be afraid about what's happening in France, because France is not hell, and we can still live properly in France. And I mean, the Jewish experience is moving from country to another, and it happened a lot of time in our history.
En tant que juif, on n'a pas véritablement de problème. Je vous dis, il y a 25 restaurants juifs, 25 restaurants cachers dans le 17e. Il y en a pour tout le monde. Et les gens qui viennent habiter dans ce quartier, bah, ils sont bien parce que voilà, on a en amont toute une structure qui fait que bah, on est protégé.
This phenomena of Israelis leaving Israel is not just happening in France, but also with American, Russian, and German Jews. Yes, German Jews prefer living in Berlin, known as the headquarters of the Holocaust in Israel, rather than Israel.
People here don't seem to judge you too much for how you look and what you choose to do. So it's a very open city.
When I was there, I was just feeling suffocated, just drowning kind of feeling.
London Jews are also coming back to the UK after spending some time in Israel. Chaim Bershith, a Jewish filmmaker and photographer living in the UK, gives his take on why Jews are leaving Israel.
I read over the last week a number of pieces in French about poverty in Israel affecting those who came from France to live in Israel after the different massacres in Paris that were directed against Jews. Now, that was really interesting because I think about between 1,500 and 2,000 French Jews moved to Israel after that. And most of them have returned to France because what they found is that very quickly their savings have been used up, the money they brought from France, and they could not actually make ends meet. So though in most cases these were very nationalist people, they were very Zionist, they wanted to somehow contribute to Israel, they actually found that Israel is not contributing to their level of existence. You know, they found that they cannot afford to do the basic things and went back to France. A number of people from Britain, these are smaller numbers because people from Britain have not moved to Israel in big numbers, have found the same things, and also people from America. So it does affect those misguided individuals that move to Israel thinking that they have come to paradise and finding it rather closer to hell.
Jews who leave to Israel sooner or later find out that life there is not as sweet as it was outside of Israel, contrary to what they were promised by the Israeli regime. This is what tens of thousands of Israelis who have left Europe for Israel are finding out. Whatever their reasons are for moving to Israel, success is never guaranteed. Dana Bohinich, who recently moved to Israel from France, believes that those from the younger generations who move out to Israel face the harshest times.
2 ans, il est ingénieur informaticien, il est parfaitement bilingue, il est venu ici, il est resté 2 ans sans job, il est reparti en France. C'est inadmissible, je veux dire.
Other French expats in Israel were forced to live in between Israel and their home country just to be able to make a living.
Pas lâcher leur situation et de ce fait ils envoient leur famille en Israël et ils restent travailler en France. Et ils font l'aller et venue.
Many European Jews also face the hardship of having to speak Hebrew, the official language of Israel. Some can't even communicate their health problems to the relevant bureaucracies.
C'est pour la prise en charge de Feshva Israël?
Je sais pas ce que c'est moi en français, en hébreu. Voilà, c'est ça qu'elle voulait, qui lui manquait. Alors je vais tout vous laisser. Ça. Je sais pas quoi ça, j'ai rien compris.
According to statistics by the market research firm Media Shavuki, 37% of Israelis are considering leaving Israel in the future. Over 55% of Israeli migrants feel that the biggest problems newcomers face in Israel is the difficulty of getting ahead economically in Israel. The same survey says that 80% of those leaving Europe for Israel face a drop in income and hence a deterioration of the quality of life they were used to. Many of those who are leaving Israel are young, educated, and successful, and most of them don't come back. Now, the long list of reasons for their abandoning of Israel seems to continue despite constant reminders by the regime that Israel is the one